And so it is perhaps no surprise whatsoever that one of the leading voices during this time of the coronavirus panic has been Bill Gates. He has been turned to by any number of media outlets that, oh, by the way, tend to be funded, at least partially, at least in their global health coverage, by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, like NPR, like ABC, like BBC, like many other outlets. And they have turned to Bill Gates as a leading voice during this time of coronavirus panic. And he has said explicitly on many occasions, we're not going to return to normal until the vast majority of the globe has been vaccinated. And as we've pointed out, again, this is happening during Operation Warp Speed, where they're going as fast as possible, circumventing established timelines for vaccine development and using experimental mRNA vaccine technology to quicken things up so they don't have to incubate these vaccines in eggs and go through the regular process. Now they can develop vaccines in a matter of months. And so we may see a coronavirus vaccine by the end of the year. Again, anyone who is going to willingly submit themselves to rolling up their sleeve and being first in line for this vaccine without having seen the effects of it in extensive clinical trials, I don't understand that mentality, which is why I think they are trying to get ahead of the game and implement this in law ahead of time to say that, and to change laws as they did, for example, in the UK with the Coronavirus Act. As you note, they are already coming out and saying in New York State and other places, this is going to be mandatory and there is nothing you can do about it. In other localities, I'm sure it will not be mandatory legally, but I'm sure there will be immunity passports of one sort or other that will be required to show that you have been vaccinated in order to access this public space or what have you. This is the systematic infrastructure that we're seeing rolled out right now, which is tying into the contact tracing, which is tying into the biometric identification grid that is going into place that will be tied into these immunity passports that will eventually also be tied to cashless payments as I go through in my series on Bill Gates, which for the record is at corbettreport.com/Gates. I hope people will go there. It's a 4-part documentary that's 100% freely available, audio, video, and a complete hyperlinked transcript of the entire documentary. Do not take what I am saying at face value. I link up all of the sources of what I'm talking about so that people can investigate them more for themselves. And once they do so, I think they will see what we are living through is essentially not just the greatest swindle in the history of humanity, although that is part of it with regard to the CARES Act, for example, being passed in the United States, let alone the various bailouts, corporate bailouts, of course, that are taking place around the globe, let alone the billions of doses of this vaccine that we can assume are going to be manufactured on the back of this. It's not just a monetary swindle. This is actually a power grab, the likes of which we have never seen before on the planet, at the end of which every single movement, every single contact that you have, every transaction that you have is going to be monitored in real time in the name of public health, of course, and will never be abused by any government agency or public health official, ... I think we can understand where this is heading and why this has been the nightmare scenario proposed by every dystopian sci-fi writer since Orwell. It is coming true in the light of this pandemic non-crisis, as we are now learning. And unfortunately, Bill Gates has been kind of like the spider at the center of that web, funding every aspect of this agenda.
We have 5 minutes remaining in our program. I wanted you to devote time to showing the other side of Bill Gates, the person who is a very big enthusiast of eugenics, because he has stated repeatedly on the record at a TED Talk that we could get between 10 to 15% of the world's population under control through vaccines. And then we find that a tetanus vaccine in Kenya was a sterilizing vaccine. They stopped it after the doctors found out about it, but the Gates Foundation was one of the sponsors of that. Could you give us the backdrop on how dangerous this whole cabal of people who believe that we need less people, of course, not people like them or not people from a certain class, but people in poorer countries?
Well, it's important to point out the side that Bill Gates will point out, and that the so-called fact checkers who have appointed themselves as the gatekeepers, essentially, of information in this online news era, would point out, which is to say that Bill Gates is not saying that he's going to use vaccines to reduce the population. What he's saying is that if we do a good job, and if we get child mortality rates down by introducing vaccines here and there, then parents will be incentivized to have less children, because they essentially are trying to get 2 children to live to adulthood. But if there's a high child mortality rate, they'll have many children to ensure that 2 reach, and that's what leads to overpopulation. Now, the argument that he's making there is not really a scientifically backed one. He sources Hans Rosling, who came forward with this idea in recent decades. As far as I know, there's no actually published, verified scientific research behind that. But at any rate, we can tell that is a fig leaf of a cover for what is essentially the real agenda here. And we know that because, for example, just as one example that I document in the documentary, in 2009, Bill Gates and David Rockefeller and Warren Buffett sent out invitations to a group to meet at Rockefeller University campus, a group of billionaires, including people like Ted Turner and others who have been on the record stating that their part of their goal is to reduce the human population. And they invited these people to a secret meeting that was held off the record at Rockefeller University, that it was discovered after the fact was devoted to the question of how these billionaires can devote their resources to reduce the world population. And this is a big story, and I understand people who are just finding out about it may not know the historical development of population control and this idea, but it does relate to the eugenics philosophy, ideology, a pseudoscience that was developed in the late 19th century and which was the rage, absolutely the core scientific belief of the early 20th century that was propounded by everyone who was anyone, including Teddy Roosevelt and many others, that essentially held that the rich and powerful were rich and powerful because their genes essentially made them better human beings, and therefore they deserved to propagate and to breed with each other to have good children with good genes, and the poorer classes were poor because they had bad genes that needed to be eliminated from the gene pool. This idea led to the forced sterilization laws and others that were all the rage in the United States in the 20s and 30s, until the Nazis and the atrocities of World War II put a bad light on eugenics. So unfortunately, eugenics did not go away. It simply changed its name through a process called crypto-eugenics. And we saw the American Eugenics Society, for example, morph into the Population Council, which was funded by John D. Rockefeller III. The Rockefellers had been instrumental in funding the original eugenics quote-unquote science. And that torch has been picked up by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in recent years. Again, there's a lot of data here for people to digest, so I hope they will go to the documentary and take a look at it, and take a look at the source documents that I'm pointing to. I think you will come to the conclusion that there is a different ideology at work than simply Bill Gates having some sort of road to Damascus moment of suddenly becoming a world-saving philanthropist after having spent a couple of decades ruthlessly running his monopolistic business practice, suddenly caring about people all around the world, even as he wants to reduce the world population. There are obvious contradictions in that official narrative that can only be resolved when we understand that eugenics is the underlying philosophy that people like Bill Gates are pushing here. And I want to stress it is not all 100% Bill Gates, and if the Gates Foundation was eliminated, this idea would go away. Unfortunately, no. There are many people who wittingly or otherwise go along with that eugenics-based agenda, and I think this needs to be brought out into the open and really discussed.